our favorite guest on this show. We love having you on, sir. And I had to have you on as soon as I saw that new video you put on YouTube. And I was like, you know what? That is some interesting stuff. You always come with like the best information when it comes to conspiracy stuff. So welcome back to Skywatchers, my friend.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here. And thank you for pointing out. I have a radio show on YouTube, and I opened the show, or inaugurated the show, on the 100th anniversary of John F. Kennedy's birth, which was May 29th. So I did a program called the Kennedy Century, and I'm releasing it in segments. So the first one's 11 minutes long. They'll be about that long because, you know, people don't have a long attention span these days.
Yeah,
so
welcome to short attention span theater.
Yeah.
No, actually, the material is very important, and it's better to take it in small doses. So this one, I also have to say that I feel that I have a mandate from John F. Kennedy to remind people of his message and his words, and to point out that the assassination is one big distraction from the really great thing about his life, which was his life. The things he did, the things he said, what he wrote. And so I am reciting in this, I recite the first few paragraphs of his inaugural address, which impressed me very deeply and got me out of a bad situation because I was forced to enter oratory contests by my school. And I hated to do it because like getting drafted and thrown, you know, your weekends are wrecked because you had to go to these debates, or not debates, actually they were oratory. You had to recite. And so the first year I did George Washington's farewell address, which was a very stilted old English kind of language. And then Kennedy was inaugurated, and then I chose to do Kennedy's inaugural address. And I did well enough at the school where the contest was held to be, you know, they put the spotlight on me, and I was able to get a scholarship to that school, Power Memorial, where I've told you I went to school with Kareem Jabbar.
Yep.
So I lucked out. The speech got me to the school. I competed. I didn't win, but I did well enough to be remembered, and they accepted my application, and that's how I went. How I wound up going to school with Kareem Jabbar and a whole bunch of other great athletes. So I have this kinship with him, and mentally as well as spiritually. So I feel that in the coming years, I'm turning my attention to reciting passages from his speeches, the most important ones. For example, in one of the segments, I'm going to recite 3 or 4 paragraphs from his American University speech, which is the one where he speaks about we all inhabit this small planet, we all breathe the same air, basically. So thank you for pointing that out. It's on YouTube. I have a Robert Morningstar channel. I also have a kind of a whimsical piece there. I had to familiarize myself with the movie editing software again after a year and a half of not doing anything. So I put together this little piece about a UFO experience that is a metaphor for some things that have happened at the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, where I teach Tai Chi and other sports, Thunderball being one of them. So I put this thing called Thunderball POV, which is point of view. I shot this hyperdimensional sport wearing video glasses so that your
Wait a minute, hyperdimensional sport?
Yeah, you have to learn that in order to do what hyperdimensional sport is, it's an expansion of your consciousness and in your body movement to understand that we don't live in a flat universe, that space-time is curved, and the fastest path through this kind of space-time is not a straight line, it's a curved path. And so we start to apply relativity theory in learning how to move in relative motion to these fast-moving balls so that you're never hit by anything. You see it coming, you evade it, but you receive the energy and turn it in a fluid motion so that ideally you never stop the object. And it actually creates a model of the atom. Electron jumps from one shell to another. You got to take a look at it. It's really exciting. It's a peaceful martial art. It's a very high level of skill that teaches you how to be aware of your environment at all times and to see threats that are coming or approaching you. It trains your eyesight, your peripheral vision. And so you learn to catch 1, 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 5 balls thrown randomly. Not juggling. It's not juggling. You throw. Jugglers don't throw 3 at a time, 4 at a time, doubles regularly. And they're all different. Every moment is different in the sport. So anyway, I had a good, very nice student. He was a beginner. He was a drummer, and very, coordinated. So I took a video classes and I shot a few scenes there. So I compiled them, and I have had 4, 5 UFO experiences at this moment. Doing Tai Chi and 1 at night in astronomy. Wow. And so I compiled those ideas, those experiences into this little whimsical little story. A guy takes a walk in the park, meets his friend. Obama's helicopter flies overhead, UFO in the sky while he's flying. Then they play their sport, and then, we go home. And then you get at the end, you get a more advanced view of what it's really like. So there's still a tripod camera showing the 2 players. But in the first section, you are seeing what I see as 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 5 balls at a time come in. And you're going to see how rapidly my hands move in Tai Chi that I can catch 2, 3 balls at a time. 2 is simpler, just every day. But 2 and 3 and 4 simultaneously, you have to have very rapid eye-hand coordination.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. So I point that out. But, it's just a little exercise. It's a fun little piece, 6 minutes long. But I'm coming forward with more the Kennedy Century. And then I'm going to do another series called The Kennedy Years. And that's probably what I'm going to cover his really important work, which is not his death, and not the assassination. Right. But I still have my work. I'm planning to reconstruct the Zapruder film. As I told you years ago, something came down, you Google something in my lap, and I recognized them as some of the missing frames from the Zapruder film. And one of my projects is to reconstruct what the real Zapruder film ought to have looked like, or did look like. So, but tonight I really wanted to talk about UFOs, because so many interesting things have been happening. And I heard your dissertation. I heard you earlier. And that question about do aliens eat and do aliens excrete? Yeah. Yes. The grays are particularly foul smelling, because according to witnesses and people who have experienced them, they absorb nutrients through their skins. So they sit in vats. They sit in vats of serum, which I won't go into describing. And they absorb it through the skin like a sponge, and then they excrete it through the skin, secrete it.
Ouch.
And that gives them a very, very foul smell, which is part of the horror that humans experience. When they smell the gray, it puts the body into actually a less fight and more flight reaction.
Now, is this only with the grays, or
this is specific relating to the grays. Bigfoot also. Bigfoot is another stinky critter.
Well, when you're that big and that hairy, you're gonna have a funky.
Yeah, but also apparently,
you could ask my cousin. He's a big hairy dude, and he smells terrible all the time. So if you're Bigfoot,
this is beyond human tolerance, and
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
hydrogen. We don't excrete hydrogen sulfoxide, and it's apparently the fumes from this thing. If the person smells it, their brains go into an altered state, foggy brain, discord, they fear, run like hell, pass out, and that is one of the theories about the effect of close encounter with Bigfoot. You pass out, and your memories will be washed away, and the other thing about reactions, now we're talking about interesting experiences here, Encounters with extraterrestrials, which can be by chance. You can also have an encounter by design where they'll abduct you. By chance, I mean you come upon it. You observe a UFO, see it come down, you see them go out. But then there's the abduction. And in the abduction experience, there is something that's a well-known phenomenon that people's memories, they'll have to struggle. Some people can remember, but others will have to struggle for years and will remember over time, mostly from disturbances in sleep, bruising, marks that are left on the body.
Eventual hypnosis therapy. Let me ask you a question, Robert. What would you classify, for example, Travis Walton's scenario, his case? Because this is not your typical abduction scenario. He wasn't like it wasn't like they went to him and they abducted him.
No, I know Travis Walton, and I've read his book. I followed him the whole thing for years, and he actually now believes that the saying, "The curiosity killed the cat." Yeah, that's what happened. He was so curious when he saw it. All the others were scared inside the truck. He was just he was taken over by curiosity, awe. He ran out and he ran really too close to it. And then it moved and there was a shock because, a UFO has a very powerful electric field around it. People don't realize, it's an electromagnetic device. And so when he approached it too closely, maybe some metal on his the clothes, his belt buckle, but something zapped him and knocked him 10 feet away, as they depict in the movie.
Right.
And then everybody ran away. He feels the aliens came and rescued him. They didn't want to zap him. They didn't really want to. It was like a come upon abduction, and that stuff that they did.
They said, "Oops."
Oops, sorry. Let's see if we can fix you.
Oops, I did it again.
So that's another part of the story. He also said that the movie gave you the feeling of terror that he experienced, but it was really exaggerated. For example, he was not naked when he was left on the road. He had clothes.
Well, the entire actual alien scene in the movie where they strip him up, bare naked, and he's in the ship, and he looks at the supposedly the suits that they wear. I mean, none of that happened. That whole entire scene is
it did happen in a sense, but not that they didn't put that suffocating membrane over him.
Right, none of that happened. I mean, I had him. In fact, it's funny because I had him on the show once, and I kept asking him I had him point by point. I asked him point by point, Travis, did this happen? Did that happen? Did this happen? And he's like, nope. And I was like, I know because I've read the book, and in the book you went into detail, and it's completely different than what they depicted in the film. And he's like, yeah, and this is why he wants to eventually buy the rights back and try to make the movie over again, so they could do it right. Now there's a documentary that did really. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's a documentary.
Very, very good. He got the real people and now and the recollection. It's a very fine movie that I saw here. But I wanted to say, folks, we're too oriented to the moving image. Our brains are too attached to the cinematic. And I have to tell you that Travis Walton is a very fine writer. That book, it's very surprising to think of a lumberjack as you think of Travis. He was a lumberjack. Right. But the book is so well written, it's so eloquent. I was very impressed with the writing, so I recommend to people that they read it. So the other thing I want to read to you, which is important, is that a friend of mine named Captain Robert Collins, he wrote a book called Exempt from Disclosure. And he used to be with the Foreign Technology Division of the U.S. Air Force at, Wright-Patterson, the guys that recover the stuff and reverse engineer it.
Yep.
And
foreign technology, right. They should call it off-world technology.
I published an article he wrote many years ago. That's how we became friends and colleagues. And it's called FTD does not stand for the florist. And that's when he revealed that Foreign Technology Division is the area of the U.S. Air Force, the division that handles UFOs, because that is foreign technology. You see? That's how they hide it. When we think of foreign technology, we would ordinarily think Russia, Germany, France, whoever. South Africa was very advanced until Mandela took over and things crashed in a third world country. But anyway, he revealed things about the aliens' internal structures and organs and their teeth, molars. He had in his book. He's got a photograph of a cast of an alien jaw and the differences in the teeth that they have. They don't have incisors. They have things for crushing and munching. And
how vastly different is it from ours?
very different. It's like if you imagine a mouth with all molars. That's the way, the lower jaw. Anatomy, if you want to call it that, of the gray, you can't really think of it in terms of our flesh and blood, because according to Captain Collins' book, the Air Force came to the conclusion that the Greys are kind of a cybernetic organism. They're cloned.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and that they're kind of part machine and part animate matter. But I've said to you, having experienced my own close encounters with Greys, that they're intelligent, they're telepathic, they're animate, but they're not alive. They don't have souls. And that's a very
I've always heard that they're like very much like a worker race of created beings.
Oh yeah, okay. Here's another thing. Another theory is that the Greys were engineered by the highest of the highest alien. The dominant alien is the mantids. And the mantids created the Grey by crossing something that they had, possibly, insectoids. Insects are kind of machine-like in many ways in the appendages and points and the mechanics of the exoskeletons of their bodies. And some theorize that Greys are a mantis-human hybrid. The result is a Grey, which has characteristics of an insectoid, hive-minded creature, and basically bipedal structure, upright, humanoid but not human. I wanted to read something for you guys. As I mentioned this because Captain Collins and I are in contact, and we exchange a lot of information and documents and things. And he brought my attention back to the IPU report, which is the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit report. That was the division, or the division of the Army that was sent to recover the Roswell crash debris and the bodies. Mm-hmm. It's a long document, but I want to read you a couple of paragraphs which are very, very enlightening.
Go for it.
And they deal with, well, you'll see what they deal with. I'll read them. This is page 5 of 8 pages. But it says, point 9, all civilian and military personnel involved with the recovery operations had a need to know access with proper security clearances. Though several MPs suffered nervous breakdowns resulting in one committing suicide, MP details from Alamogordo and Kirtland performed security functions very well. Ground personnel from Sandia experienced some form of contamination resulting in the deaths of 3 technicians. The status of the 4th technician is unknown. Autopsies are scheduled to determine cause of death. CIC, which stands for Central Intelligence Corps, or Counterintelligence Corps, has made appropriate security file entries into dossiers with cross-references for future reviews. Now here comes a very interesting paragraph. With the pending approval of James Forrestal as new Secretary of Defense, it is certain that he will be briefed on certain aspects of the discoveries. The only cabinet member to date that may know of the details is Secretary of State Marshall. It has become known to CIC that some of the recovery operations was shared with Representative John F. Kennedy of Massachusetts, Democrat, elected to Congress in '46, son of Joseph P. Kennedy, Commission on Organization of the Executive Branch of the Government. Kennedy had limited duty as a naval officer assigned to naval intelligence during the war. It is believed that information was obtained from a source in Congress who was close to the Secretary for the Air Force. I'll read you one more because this dovetails. We'll bring it to a close with this paragraph.
Okay.
As to the bodies recovered at LZ-2, that's Landing Zone 2, it appeared that none of the 5 crew members survived entry into our atmosphere due to unknown causes. Dr. Detlev Bronk has been asked to assist in the autopsy as well of one well-preserved cadaver to be done by Major Charles E. Ray. From what descriptions the team was able to learn and from photographs taken by intelligence photographers, the occupants appear in most respects human with some anatomical differences in the head, eyes, hands, and feet. They have a slight build, about 5 feet tall, with grayish-pink skin color. They have no hair on their bodies and clothed with a tight-fitting flight suit that appears to be fireproof. Some of the bodies looked as if they had been burned on the head and hands.
Ironically enough, there's a very loud fire siren going on in the back.
No, hey, you can't buy these special effects for $1 million, man.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Are you sure they're not stopping by you?
They'll be right. They're gonna buy. Actually, their overall stature reminds one of young children. It is believed that there were male and female genders present, but was hard to distinguish. Okay, there you have it in a nutshell. In those paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had chosen the paragraph opening because of the reference to James Forrestal. When I continued on, it just came up with the John F. Kennedy reference. So it says quite explicitly that John F. Kennedy knew about the Roswell crash and the recovery of the bodies from a few days after it happened. And that
but I mean, does it shock you, though? I mean, does that shock you that he would know? I mean, I'm not shocked by that.
Well, it's not shocking to us now, but it explains a lot about his reasons for wanting to become president of the United States, to get to the bottom of this. I'll tell you something else about John F. Kennedy, but he may have had an even earlier encounter with UFOs. If you saw, there's a reference to his service in naval intelligence. And what people don't know is that his PT boat career was not, racing after cruisers and battleships trying to torpedo them. It was mostly intelligence work, spying on the open sea, trying to intercept troop convoys that the Japanese were sending into the islands. He was on Guadalcanal at the time that this happened. And I found out about 10 years ago that in Guadalcanal, there is a UFO phenomenon that's been there for over 100 years, terrorizing the natives. And it's called the dragonfish.
Oh, wow.
And the natives, as I said, 100 years. So that's 1917 was John F. Kennedy was born. Well, 100 years from the time that this researcher found it. So about 2005, so from 1905 on. And they said that the dragonfish would come out of the water and then fly into the highlands of Guadalcanal in the northern section.
Interesting.
And it would come out of the mountains, out of the highlands of north, and then go into the sea. And that curious fisherman who had felt courageous, intrepid, and curious would canoe out there, and they would be attacked. Sometimes they wouldn't be coming back. They were burned by the dragonfish. And I think that President Kennedy, being stationed on Guadalcanal, doing this intelligence work, exposed to the natives and their legends, and may have had a very early UFO experience in the Pacific, which is very probable, highly likely, because General MacArthur made a lot of comments about the UFOs, because the UFOs and the Foo Fighters, they weren't over there all exclusively in Europe. They weren't Foo Fighters in the Pacific, but there was a lot of UFO activity in the Pacific. So we're dealing with this global event. I've come to the conclusion, as have some other people, that World War II was a war between extraterrestrial powers that were using human beings as their weapons, as their tools, and that it was Hitler in league with the Dracos and the reptilians, who were at war against the United States, who were in league with benevolent aliens, Nordics, I would think. Nordics, Pleiadians, if you want to call them that. There's a lot of labels you can put on them, but more humane and humanoid aliens rather than siding
But
with.
the Nordics, they do. I mean, this is where it gets a little, perplexing though, Robert, because the Nordics have also been sided with the Greys working together.
That's right.
Travis saw them like that. So I mean, that's a little weird to say that
Right.
One's negative, one's good.
Right. Well, no, it can be. One's negative and one's good. Like we had the white race, and we had Hitler, and that was a white race, and we had Britain and America, and that was a white race. And I definitely believe that one was good and one was evil. And then after the war, something else happened, and we were subverted.
So do we have like multiple Nordic-looking aliens with multiple like gray-looking aliens that are like on each?
Yeah, they're tall grays and they're short grays. They are the Air Force categorization of alien types does list a tall alien and a short alien. The short alien is really short, stocky, more reptilian looking than the tall gray alien. The tall grays 4.5 to 5, maybe 5 to 2. And then, but the short gray, as they call it, short gray alien, is very short, stocky, less of a neck, more reptile looking, kind of, I imagine more akin to what we call a chupacabra. Very powerful too. Short, 3.5 feet tall, maybe 45 to 60 pounds, but extremely powerful and ferocious. And the thing is, they mirror what you do. If you are aggressive and hostile, they'll act that way. If you are benevolent, I won't say submissive, but unafraid, then they have trouble with that. They have trouble with people being unafraid. They also are telepathic, but their intelligence is not that high. They're programmed.
Now, question, Robert, before you continue. Are we pulling? Are you pulling these characteristics of these beings from like the 57 supposed species that there's known to be?
Yeah, I have read the Book of Aliens and the 57 kinds, but
right.
Of the 57 kinds, I think that about 53 of them.
Wait for it. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, they're just invisible. They just don't want to touch, get involved with us, and they're doing their research and their observations or their sightseeing, but there are about 4 others that are actively involved in human affairs, interfering with our lives, and sometimes interfering for good, and other times interfering to our detriment. I don't believe the Greys are our friends. I don't trust aliens. I have had my own close encounters with several of them, and I'm a human being, and I'm an individual, and I'm not owned by anything or anyone else. And that is another con job that they try to pull on the unwitting abductee. Oh, we created you. We own you. You belong to us. We're going to make
our image, our likeness. That's what you are.
Yeah. You know what? There was a question there earlier about evolution. And I believe that we all have a reptilian gene in us. See, that was the mark of Cain, was the introduction of a reptilian gene into the Adamic or Christic genome, right? Adam was the Christ, the perfect being, the perfect man. And Eve was drawn from him, cloned from him. When the serpent crossed with Eve, this engendered this new kind of human being, the line of Cain. And through the intermarriage, intermingling of human DNA in the course of the ages, almost all of us, I believe, are walking around with some proportion of the serpent
Mental
gene.
retardation, because that would be like the cause of all that interbreeding. Let's be honest. Like, how is
Well,
it we don't see more mental disease if that's the case?
well, a lot of it was. What are you talking about? Inbreeding?
Yeah, because we'd have to have like centuries of
Sure,
inbreeding.
there's a lot in cultures that inbreed. There is a lot of genetic deformity, retardation,
Right.
consequences of that. So
I mean, would you think? And honestly, and I'm not trying to make a joke here. I think this is real serious because I do believe that there's a lot of obviously there's been inbreeding throughout history, but do you think that this might cause or be part of the cause to why in our DNA we have so much junk DNA and like there's like 30,000 something chromosomes? There's just a bunch of junk. Do you think that might be the reason why? Because of all the inbreeding that took place?
no, the junk DNA.
I knew I was wrong.
It's not really junk. It's not really junk.
It's just not activated.
It's not activated, exactly. It's something that's in repose, waiting to be triggered for
That can't be good.
whatever its expression is going to be. That's a very interesting field. It's remarkable how much we're learning about DNA. Also, as long as we're talking about DNA, there were two branches of humanity that branched off from two different female streams. The conceit of science has been that all the races evolved from a single woman. Of course, Eve or Lucy.
Right.
However, years ago, they found a fossilized finger in Siberia, and it was apparently a female finger, and there was enough DNA to do a study of it. And they found that the matrilineal DNA in that fossil was not the same matrilineal DNA that we have here, let's say, in the West, in Europe, Africa, the Middle East. It's really totally...
Would that mean that we've evolved, Robert? I mean, is that what that means?
Yes, we have. We have. And I believe that there's, just like we used to have upgrades for our computers, I think that there is a force operant, one of these entities that is working on human beings to upgrade us. I think that the whole life of Jesus was the big upgrade, that Jesus came along and he was genetically engineered and he was a crossbreed of an angelic being and a female, an earthly woman, whose DNA had been prepared for ages, culled, I don't know how to filter, so that when the time of this annunciation, let's call it, the angel Gabriel coming to her, it may be angel Gabriel who conceived the Christ at Qumran. The Dead Sea Scrolls, I've said before on your show, say explicitly the angels were coming and going, and there was a sacred precinct in Qumran where only perfect people could go. No one with diseases, no one with deformities, no one with any kind of illness could enter. And this was a tabernacle.
That rules me and the other guy out completely.
Yeah, and well, anyway, and then they had very strict, what they call purification rituals, in case the Essene woman were to have angel seeds spilled upon her arm or upon her thighs, she had to go through a 10-day purification ritual. Now, I say what they call purification ritual, in our modern times, we would call it a decontamination ritual. Because right here, I just read you that IPU report that said 3 medical technicians at Sandia succumbed because of some kind of contamination. And so it is very dangerous. These things are, not of this world, and the bacteria that they may be carrying is something that is not really good for human beings. So human beings have had contact with aliens, and they come away with rashes, fevers, many other...
and just from simple contact, too, which is...
side effect. Yes.
Yeah. Quickly, Robert, I have a question in the chat room that I wanted to get to, and they want to know, what do you think of Whitley Strieber? What are your thoughts on that?
I think Whitley Strieber is a genius, and I was very impressed by his first and second books.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that really stood out and stands out even to this day was this one idea that Whitley had in communion to try to explain this opening of the portal and the interdimensional nature of the UFO and spiritual experiences. And he wrote that perhaps there is a technology on the other side of death, and that beings on that other side of death use that technology to open portals that make it possible for them to come in here for a limited amount of time to do something, observe or act, and then have to get back. And that idea, I think, is a stroke of genius, which gave me an insight when I have had close encounters with ghosts. There is a deathly chill that overtakes the human body. And the last and most powerful time that I had a ghost experience, it was all white. And as it approached me, I thought to myself, my God, this is antimatter, ectoplasma, antimatter.
Mm-hmm.
This is, and I said, this could be the Bose-Einstein condensate, something called Beck, BEC, Bose-Einstein condensate. And it's a super cold state of helium that makes all the atoms of helium line up north to south in rows or
In unisons.
in polarity,
Right.
and it makes it appear, and it's made to appear inside a magnetic field. As long as the magnetic field is in effect, the Bose-Einstein condensate will be visible. As soon as the magnetic field disappears, it dissipates and there's nothing there. And I thought, this is it, and that would explain the cold, and the shivering and the tremors, because imagine this super cold being, with a temperature around it that's like Antarctica, because it has to be that cold for it to manifest and appear. And this big giant icicle comes up to you, and it's stealing and leeching all your chi and your life force from you, and your body goes into hypothermia. That's my explanation of these tremors and terrors that I went through, because my mind was together. I was ready to deal with the ghost, and then I did converse with him and have this conversation, very deep, profound. But my body was just quivering jelly with every cell screaming, as we say, screaming bloody murder. Yeah, you feel like you're going to die. That's what screaming bloody murder is. And I could hear every cell in my body, every hair, up on end. And it, like, when people's hair stands up on end, you get goosebumps. Imagine that amplified 1,000 times in the sensation. And having to hold yourself together while you communicate with this entity. And it was a very good thing. It was a very terrifying but life-saving experience. See, you think it's a bad thing when it happens, because you are in mortal terror and you're in shock for days and days, if not years, to recover and understand it. Then you realize, wow, that being came there to protect me, to set me on the right course. And that's the way it's been. It's guidance. Sometimes they will intervene in your life to guide you and push you in a certain direction. And other times, this entity that really cares about you will intervene very rudely, stop you in your tracks to save you. And you think, oh, this is terrible. I'm stopped in my tracks. And then years later you go, wow, was I lucky? If I hadn't stopped then, I wouldn't have made it this far. That's kind of how I feel about my spiritual encounters.
I'm new to the chat room as I'm listening to you, and
Sure,
they want to expound on this Whitley Strieber thing.
Yeah.
Now that they're saying to ask you that, since he was originally a sci-fi writer, and that's what really he did before he had his Close Encounter book. Do you think that perhaps what he wrote early on as a sci-fi writer might have been memories that or ideas that was given to him that he just repressed and put it in as work.
Yes.
Do you think that could be a possibility? Some of that stuff
Yes,
actually is legit.
actually, I think he believes that himself. That those ideas that I thought he wrote Wolfen. He wrote. I think he did write Wolfen. He wrote a werewolf book and other things like that. And he did say that he realizes after recovering the memory that maybe his creative spirit was erupting and writing these novels, trying to give him the message and to remind him of what was going on. I actually think that the movie Communion is a very fine movie, and I'm kind of attached to it in a way because I had a psychic experience in what year was that? But anyway, I then went to see the movie, and I realized that I had had a remote viewing experience of the movie the night before because the scene of what I saw in my remote viewing or lucid dream was a scene in the movie, which is this point of view, the POV of the UFO flying around Whitley Strieber's rooftop, more or less waiting for him to come out or them to stop and go in. But anyway, I think Communion is a brilliant movie. They didn't have a big budget, but they really did a good job.
No, they
psychologically, and the music by Eric Clapton, and the eeriness of the cabin, all of that I think was a very, very fine movie. As a matter of fact, I have my own copy of it on VHS.
And let's not forget, Robert, it has one of the greatest actors of all times, Christopher Walken, in the movie.
Yeah, you know what? At the time that movie came out, I became intrigued by it. And the reason was that Christopher Walken's performance and his interaction with the alien was striking a chord in me that I had not yet recalled that I had had an encounter. I guess I said 1978 because that's when I had my encounter with short grays. So when I saw Christopher Walken, and as I said, I'm a parapsychologist, I think on that level that movie is a masterpiece in dealing with the dimensions, the different realms and states of mind, parapsychological states of mind that one encounters in an alien experience, whether abduction or seeing a UFO or having an intrusion. So I think Whitley Strieber is a brilliant person. Listen, here's another part of the story that some people think. Some people believe that Whitley Strieber was given information. In addition, when he was found out that he was an abductee and that he wanted to write this book, that he got information from Central Intelligence Agency that he wrote into his books. Because whether people believe it or not, the CIA has been trying to acclimate the American public psychologically to the UFO presence since the 1960s. And as I've said on your show before, in 1965, I saw Frank Edwards, who wrote Flying Saucers, Serious Business, say that he knew CIA personnel who told him that they were preparing the American public in 7 stages of 7 years, and that in these stages, 7 stages of 7 years, they would gradually acclimatize the American public to look on the alien presence not as a monster from outer space, but a fellow creature.
Savior.
Well, he didn't say that, but he said that they would be shown to be more benevolent, whereas they were 50s was all monsters from outer space. And he predicted Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He said, and there's a technology being developed. You're going to see films, movies of a quality of reality that you could never imagine today. And these films will be used to acclimatize the American public, to prepare them for the revelation of the alien presence in 7 stages of 7 years. That's 49 years from 1965. So that would have been 2014. And we have seen what I call a slow disclosure unfolding around the world. And the most recent one, people want official disclosure. Well, it has happened already, and it happened just recently in Iran. The
Oh, really? Tell us. How did that
president,
happen?
the president of Iran,
Uh-huh.
on a news program, gave an interview and discussed his UFO experience when he was a little boy, 8 years old.
No kidding.
No kidding.
Really?
And he says that he was 8 years old and he was going to school one morning like every other morning, and he saw this thing in the sky flying really low near the mosque. This is the interesting part. He said he saw it flying low near the mosque, so he ran over to the mosque, and it came down and landed in what I might call the plaza in front of the mosque. And he said it looked like, you know those things that they put on the back of elephants to ride around?
To ride around, yeah. The saddles. Isn't it called like an elephant saddle?
Well, you could ride inside it with a cover. You know, like a Maharaja.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about now. Yeah. It was like a little
I think
cart,
it was
like a little cart.
He had an Iranian
little
word.
rickshaw kind of a thing.
Right.
With a canopy. And he says that it then took off and it flew off again. And he followed it and it went to another mosque. And that it hovered over the mosque and then zip, it just disappeared into the sky. So there you have official disclosure in Iran. The most strict Sharia law country has now admitted that there are UFOs. And it's my belief that Islam was created by an alien entity using UFO technology to mind control these people that eventually created the Quran and have created this Luciferic movement moving across the world. Let me tell you this too.
Makes sense because they're completely different and more like extreme than any other religion on the planet.
I know a lot of Iranians, and they are a great culture. They're very intelligent people, and they are slaves. They are mind slaves. The fundamentalist ones are mind slaves to the Sharia thing.
Yeah.
But you all know about the 1976 encounter of a F-4 Phantom with a UFO over Tehran.
But tell us. We only have a couple of minutes left, but tell us quickly.
Famous case. A UFO appeared over Tehran. It was picked up on radar. The Iranian Air Force sent out 2 F-4 Phantoms after it. And the first Phantom went in and lost all its radio communications, and it split. The second Phantom went in, saw the target at 25,000 feet, homed in on it, turned on his weapons, missile lock, and it fried his electronics. There was a tremendous heat inside the cabin, like it was going to burn up. The UFO released a white UFO that just sailed. It zigzagged and was heading straight for the F-4. And the F-4 pilot, seeing it coming and having no instruments, no radio, and no arms, turned away from it. The UFO followed it, then turned around, went back to the mothership. Then the pilot circled around, saw the mothership descend. He followed it down. He went down from 25,000 feet to about 15,000 feet. He saw it land in the desert, and he said it was so bright that this rainbow-colored light was coming on all around it in resplendent, radiant colors. So then this was the General Parvez Jafari. I met him in Washington and had a long dialogue with him. And then I told him about a story that happened while he was chasing this UFO. A British doctor and an Iranian were abducted from a mountaintop, a cabin in the mountains, and they were taken on a UFO that left and took them around Europe. They saw Yugoslavia, they saw Paris, they saw London. They came back in the morning, they were dropped. They thought they'd been gone for one night. When they woke up, they walked over to their car, drove into Tehran, and they found out that they had been out for 2 days, and they had no memories other than having been taken from the cabin to the UFO, and they thought it was just overnight. I told him the story, I told him where it happened, and he lit up, and he says, the morning after, I remembered where this UFO landed, so I took a helicopter to go search for the landing site, and I landed, I found the landing site, and it was there, he said to me. it was there where you said these doctors, the doctor and this Iranian, he was really mystified. He was actually very gratified to know that there was this other event that had happened with a UFO on the very night, 2 nights, that he had been involved in this UFO chase, which is very famous. The F-4 incident, thoroughly investigated by the U.S. Air Force. And he actually gave me copies of the Air Force memorandum by Colonel Moomy, M-O-O-M-Y, Colonel Moomy.
No, no kidding.
So,
Colonel Mooney?
M-O-O-M-Y. So, anyway, so there has been disclosure in the most repressive...
We're not going to get it here in the U.S. In fact, before we go, because we're really short on time, and
yeah, I know.
Robert, I wanted to ask you before we get out of here. What are your thoughts so far on Trump, our boy Donald? What do you think so far?
Steady as he goes, man. He's doing a great job, and no matter what the fake news says, the fact that there were 2 elections today in South Carolina and in Georgia, and the Republican candidates won by a large margin. 50 to 47 in North Carolina. I think it's all like bunk, and I think we have to protect the
channel so they can check out the video. And where they can keep up with your stuff, of course, your UFO Digest is one of the places, but give them also your other links that you can give out.
Okay, sure. Best way to keep in touch with me directly is through Facebook. Robert Morningstar 12 is the number, but the one with the head of a dolphin. UFO Digest, we have some really important articles there, both about UFOs, the Anunnaki, and the Anunnaki control system. But we also have the Kalergi plan exposing the real reasons for the migrant crisis. The intentional mass migration into Europe is to dissolve Western European culture. And a Kalergi plan is an exposition of that by my friend Patrick O'Carroll. And Stephen Erdman has written several articles on the Anunnaki, as well as Nazis and the UFO, and it's all coming to a head. And you can also go for regular news to morningstarnews.nyc. But if you want to see my videos, go to the Robert Morningstar channel on YouTube. And you can type in the Kennedy Century, right? Robert Morningstar, the Kennedy Century, and then pick up from there. So, thanks a lot for having me on, fellas.
No, thank
you, sir. Thanks for being on with us last minute.
Good roller coaster ride.
It is a roller coaster ride. You're absolutely right, sir. It is truly that. But thank you so much for being on here with us. And guys, check out the video page on YouTube. Very interesting stuff, as always, with Mr. Robert Morningstar, one of our favorites right here on Skywatchers Radio. Love having you on, sir.